Okay.
Yeah, and you can send the link wherever you want to send it.
Yeah. Hi, Trish Barton.
That's me.
This is so exciting. So what we're doing is going through the questions to find out which ones you want to have for the interview process. And so I just want to start with that these are questions to choose from. And it's for brave voices, empowers and enables childhood sexual abuse survivors to speak up, to break their cycle of silence by sharing and preserving their experiences through this recordings on archive StoryCorps and also in perpetuity at the Library of Congress. And that you get to pick whichever of these questions that you like and would like to answer when we do the interview, or you can write your own, or you can allow the interviewer to ask you whatever questions they would like to ask.
Okay.
And you can decline any at any time. And this is your interview, and it's to be done in whatever way empowers you to share that which is in your heart to share. And so we're recording this so that people know the process, that it's pretty darn easy. You go to the Brave Voices Story Archive StoryCorps and you choose which ones. And so we're going to do this together so that you have an idea about which ones you'd like to answer. So we're going to start with just sharing your name and age and where you are recording today. So we're not going to actually answer them. We're just going to have you tell me if, yes, that's one that you'd like asked. Or just let me know if there's any that you don't want to be asked. Perhaps we'll do it that way.
Okay.
And then, so that's, that one just always has to be asked because that's one that StoryCorps wants to know. And then the question is, can you tell me how the person was related to you?
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah. And if it was more than one person, then we just slow it way down and go through each one and want to know if it was a family member or if it was a stranger, and or a family friend. And then how old you were, and if you know how old the person was who harmed you, and where did the abuse happen, what state, city, country, car, couch, backyard, schoolroom, etc. And if you can share, if you remember at all, how you were feeling at the time of when the harm occurred. And if you can tell me what you were thinking when you were harmed, if there's any memories of different thoughts. And do you know if the person was under a mind-altering substance at the time that the harm occurred? This is a super interesting question for me because I'd like to know how the substance abuse, like how often that's a factor. And I'd love to know if you told anyone about the abuse after it happened, and if so, who, and what were the consequences of telling? Were you believed? And if you didn't tell anyone, yeah.
Those are good questions. Yeah, I can answer those.
Okay, great. And then how did you cope with the abuse?
That, that's one of the hard parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can do my best at answering that.
And yeah, and share as well how you're feeling, even just hearing that question.
And it does make a difference hearing it before the actual interview, because before we started this off air, we did talk about these questions, and I had my initial reaction, which was very powerful. And the second time around, it wasn't that powerful, as powerful. It's
Mm.
still a very powerful, knock me in the heart kind of question, but I have a different reaction this time. So yeah, maybe next time I can really give you an answer.
Ah, and was it helpful hearing me say that I turned to drugs and alcohol and sex and, um, you having already heard my recording and knowing and that this is such a common thing that we do to cope with it.
Numb your feelings. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then I would be really curious to know how you would have described yourself before being harmed, and then how you would describe yourself after being harmed.
I can answer that too.
Okay. And then, yeah, what were the long-term detrimental effects to your body, your mind, your spirit, um, caused by having been harmed?
Yeah, there's a lot in that question. There are many answers that
Good.
could be involved in those. Yeah,
Yeah.
each is a different
Okay.
topic. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
And,
spirit is so different from physical, and
right.
it,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's lots and lots of questions. So as you hear them,
Mhm.
you may get a feeling for which ones are most important for you to share. And so
Okay.
you can let me know, and then I can number them so that,
Oh,
because the recording is only 45 minutes, I'd really
right,
want to get the most important questions. Um,
right.
so you can,
And because those questions really go in order, and they need to be asked. So, and whether they're answered or not is one thing, but they're crucial to the whole storyline, I guess you call it.
okay, good. Yeah. And then, do you know if the person or people who harmed you or abused themselves as children?
Good question. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
No,
You
no,
know?
no, I don't know,
Oh, okay. All right.
but it's a good question, because I hadn't thought about that.
Okay. And can you tell me what your greatest challenge has been living life after being harmed sexually as a child?
But yeah, I could
Okay.
probably do that.
And I'd love to know, what you wished you would have done differently before, during, and after the abuse that may have changed the results of what you experienced. And that kind of sounds like a convoluted question. So, um, maybe you could, tell me what you hear.
Just so I don't forget, the first thought that came to my mind is that every child should learn martial arts.
Uh-huh, good. Okay.
From the time they can stand up, they need to learn how to protect themselves. And I would assume that I'd be able to answer that when we finally do our interview, but that popped into my head immediately.
Okay. And since we're talking about this, have you heard of model mugging?
Mugging? No.
Model mugging. Yeah, it was started by a woman who had a black belt in karate, and
Wow.
she was raped because martial arts teaches martial arts, but not what happens when we're attacked in reality. And so, she all of the men who volunteer wear humongous helmets that are completely padded, and they have and all pads, and they all have black belts, all these volunteers. I did this course. And they attack you. And what happened for me was I froze. And then I heard all the women poke him in the eyes, elbow him in the nose, kick him in the groin. And then my brain engaged and I started doing it all. And we get attacked over and over and over until it's ingrained in our body. And so that was what, 30 years ago. And I still know, poke him in the eyes, elbow him in the nose. And we jump to the ground and we kick them. Um,
Yeah.
and they actually recreated me being sexually abused and gave me the opportunity to fight back so that I didn't lay there frozen the way I did as a child.
Yeah. Um,
Um, yeah,
that's good.
it's so I just making an addendum on it that it's not only martial arts, but more
Right.
specifically exactly what to do
Mhm.
and being harmed sexually. Yeah.
Yes. And I've heard the throat is a great place if you can to get that. Yeah. So
And they have one. I put Joni, my daughter, in Kid Power, which
oh,
teaches children what to do. And it is, yelling, saying no, and even how to walk with confidence because people that harm choose people who are not.
look.
Yeah. So it's great. Thank you. How do you feel about at this point me sharing how we are know each other?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's fascinating.
Oh, in a good way now, but bad way when I first when we first started talking again.
Well,
You know,
it's so this is Trish Barton. Um, I knew her as Patricia, and she was married to my brother Doug, um, who is the person who harmed me sexually. And
I was there when it was happening.
yeah,
Me away.
yeah, yeah. Um, and so this is a massively healing. Um, I reached out to Patricia to talk and have a courageous conversation and ask, if she knew what had happened because she was in the bed both times. Um, and we had a conversation, and now I learned about her being sexually abused as a child. And we're continuing our courageous conversations, and Trish is going to be a brave voice and record her experience of being harmed as a child on Archive StoryCorps. And so we are in the process of going through the questions. And so thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. This is going to be healing. We are breaking our silence. And so it's
Yes.
really exciting.
What to do?
Yeah. All right. So we'll see what other questions are okay for you. Ooh, this is a biggie also. I mean, we only have 45 minutes. So but it's like, okay, can you tell me how relationships in your life have been affected because of the sexual abuse you experienced as a child?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a biggie, right? We could write a whole book on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And yes, I can answer that.
Okay, great.
Probably deeply.
Okay.
Pretty much the same for every person.
Well, that's the thing about this, that
Person I dealt with.
mm,
Yeah.
every you know, that's what we're going to be learning from everybody's story is,
How,
um, yeah, like, like, how did we cope? How many more of us chose drugs and alcohol and sex, right? I mean, this is what's going to be so interesting to learn, and how were all of our relationships similarly affected because of a break of trust at such a young age.
Mhm.
Um, okay, what would you like to say to people who harm children? I love this one because then we get to go on this what I call a jackal rage and just get it out. But how do you feel about answering that question when it comes to the interview?
Oh my gosh. My heart's racing again.
Okay.
It, yeah, I want to be compassionate, um, but I'd want to yell and scream and be mean and hateful. And so, yeah, I guess when you ask me that question during my interview, I'll know what to say.
Okay. All right. But you're okay with me asking it. So that's great. All right. Thank you. If you did not tell anyone about the sexual abuse you received as a child, can you tell me what the reasons were you did not tell?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would want to answer that question if I knew how to answer it. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and maybe I will then once we're really into it and I'm answering those questions.
Okay. If you could go back and tell your child self one thing, what would it be? And again, you don't have to answer it now. You just need to let me know if that's a question that you're okay and would like to be asked.
Yeah, there's so many things, and
Okay.
yeah,
And you can say more than one for sure. It doesn't have to just be one.
yeah. Love yourself, definitely sure, but yeah.
Okay.
Or who knows? I mean, it's really a parenting thing, I think, parents teaching their kids how to relate to others, um, especially of the opposite sex. Don't hold things back, share things with your kids. But anyway, I don't need to get off onto that.
Okay.
We're not getting into the answers right now, but yeah.
All right. What do you want every child to know that might help prevent them from being harmed sexually as children?
Mm, yeah. Gosh, Cheryl, you haven't asked any questions that I wouldn't want to answer. So
Oh, good. Okay, great.
great questions.
Oh, good. And what knowledge do you wish you had as a child that may have prevented you from being harmed?
Say that again.
What knowledge do you wish you had as a child that may have prevented you from being harmed sexually?
Well, that's an age related thing.
Mhm.
If you're abused before you have a chance to even think anything, or um, yeah,
It's true.
it's
Yeah.
age. It bears on the age when the abuse first started.
I wonder if we could write that in a different way. What knowledge do you wish your adult caregivers would have had?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Be able to,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I'll change that. Um, Thinking back over your life, please share with me what has helped you most to recover and thrive from the trauma of having been harmed.
I know the answer to that.
Ah, good. Okay. Um, what do you value, long for, and care about?
It's a good question too. And yes.
Okay. And what matters most to you on a daily basis?
Once again, another question I would have to answer.
Okay. And what do you care most about in this life of yours?
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And who are you because of the sexual harm you experienced as a child?
Yeah, something I never let go of, evidently, because I'm still the same. I can talk about it, but yeah, I I I guess it was a lifelong, because I didn't know how to deal with it. It was a lifelong thing, and now I'm old and set in my ways and still very shy. So,
Mm. Isn't it amazing how one or two or three or however many acts, however many minutes it was, can affect us for our whole fucking life?
yeah,
You
and they
know?
were brief periods of time, yet what an impact, and what a horrible, if those things had never happened to me, I wonder who I'd be today. I wonder what kind of person I'd be, if I'd be more outgoing, if I probably wouldn't have the kids I have. So yeah.
Yeah. Just, for me, it's the armor and the protection that I go around with on a
Mhm.
daily basis, defense mechanisms of
Yeah.
self-protection and my vigilance for who could possibly harm one of my grandchildren or um, it's never ending, the
Mhm.
never wanting anything to happen to one of my grandchildren. And my whole life raising my daughter, it was hyper vigilance. What can I slept on the fucking floor of a house. I rented 2 rooms,
Oh,
and
wow.
I mean, because it was from anyways, I'm getting off track, but it's like, yeah, it
Yeah.
affects us
Mhm.
ongoing.
Yes.
And yeah, it's a bummer. I would love if anybody interviews to learn they're not affected at all. Like how
And I can't help but think about the trafficked children, and that's all they've ever known, or the ones who've known a happy home and then were abducted. And I it breaks my heart.
yeah. Yep. All right. What do you hope will be accomplished by sharing your story?
Gosh, that somebody else can relate. Yeah,
Mm,
else
and
can relate, and realize it's not just happening to them, and to talk to somebody. Yeah, there's so much to that.
and if you found forgiveness for this person
Mhm.
um who supposedly loved you or cared for you or protected you and supported you, how did you find forgiveness for the person who broke your trust as a
Mhm.
child? Did you love and trust the person who harmed you? So that's several questions.
Yeah, those are all very good, Cheryl. Very, very good, because you've lived it. So you're an excellent one to help others, and I can't wait for your website to get up there.
Ah, thank you.
Start asking.
For future generations of your family listening to this years from now, is there any wisdom you'd want to pass on to them? What would you want them to know? Okay, that's an all right question. Um, how has being harmed sexually as a child affected your religious or spiritual beliefs?
Yeah, that's a very good one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've never told me but want to tell me? Is there anything that you haven't told me? Maybe I'll say it like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good
Okay.
question. Very good.
Uh, what advice do you wish you could give your younger self? I think that there's another question that's a whole lot like that, but I have extra ones in case we're not
Those,
done with the 45 minutes. But um, if this was to be our very last conversation, is there anything you'd want to say to me?
yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Did you take psychology classes or anything, or you've learned this going through your own trauma?
Well, I do have a degree in an AA in early childhood education and a BA in child development. But I had no conscious memories of being sexually abused until I had my daughter. And so I was only 18. She was 3 months old on my 18th birthday.
Oh,
And but from then on, I started getting help. And so I'm 56 years old and I've never stopped. I mean, probably any form of therapy that you could imagine I've done. And, everything I can get my hands on to read and learn. And so it really has been a whole lifetime of healing and learning and growing.
good
Yeah.
for you.
Okay. So then we turn the tables and tell the person you're interviewing what they've meant to you. And so those are all the questions.
Okay.
And
That,
the
yeah.
logo for StoryCorps is listen, honor, and share,
Okay.
which I think is just perfect for Brave Voices as well.
Yeah.
And so now, if there's anything that I didn't ask, can you imagine questions that you have that you'd like me to add to the list?
Hmm. Oh, I guess a biggie would be, have you forgiven? Have
Okay.
you been able to forgive your perpetrators or whatever, your abusers? Because that's a very important question. Whether you're spiritually, religious spiritually or not, unforgiveness wreaks havoc on your own body.
Yeah.
You've already been through enough trauma. Why drag it down to even more? So I think that would be one thing. Have you been able to forgive? And if not, can you talk about that reasoning? Can you talk about why it's not important? Or I
Okay.
think that's part of the healing process, is being able to forgive, especially if it's not happening anymore. you know, I don't know. Each to his own, and those are things. If somebody can't answer that question, then it's best not to ask it at all.
Mhm.
Just know that up front.
So I don't use the word perpetrator or abused. Um,
Okay.
I use the person who harmed you or the
Oh, okay.
person who harmed me. And
Can you
only, sorry?
can we edit that out?
Oh, no, no, no. This is great because it's good learning for everybody. Um,
Yeah.
and the reason is because of this cycle of abuse.
Mhm.
So in the moment that you were harmed, that was the person who harmed you.
Yeah.
Um, and we just don't, I mean, some of us know if the person who harmed us was also harmed,
Mhm.
but I just think it makes it more human. And
Just,
um,
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we were abused. The act of being abused happened, but it also, I don't know, somehow helps us get out of the victim role and feel more powerful that in the past, that is what happened.
Mhm.
Um, I don't, yeah. Anyways, you can use any words that you like. I'm just, in my
Yeah.
study of nonviolent communication, I'm trying to humanize rather than, we create what we call enemy images in our head. And so when we hear the word perpetrator, it's it's this them, right? But
Yeah.
the them, like with Doug, the belief is that Doug was sexually abused by the neighbor across the street, Mr. Ward. And if that's true, he perpetrated me, he abused me, but it sounds more like a villain rather than it was my brother who harmed me.
Yeah.
And anyways, it's all semantics, but I'm, playing with, uh,
Yeah.
trying to find the humanity in all of this.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so, other than the forgiveness, can you imagine other questions that you'd like me to ask you?
Yeah. You were very thorough.
Okay. Well, between now and when we do the interview, just
Mhm.
keep a little pad of paper and write down anything that comes to mind that
Okay.
is important for your story because I didn't live in your story, and so
Yeah.
um, there can be some things that
Yeah. And maybe if they come up and, while I'm thinking and answering the other questions, I can throw it out there and you can jot it down. That's super.
absolutely, yes,
Right
absolutely.
now, yeah, I'm
All right.
proud.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the video now. And I really appreciate you being open to having this recorded so that others can see the process that we go through. It'll make it more, I hope, feel more manageable and doable for others to see, okay, that's not so horrible and terrible. It's all right. So hang on just a minute while I stop this.